Zuma, the president of the ANC, following the ANC's January 8 statement. Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us. Well, a growing economy, a skilled population, a call also on the private sector to play a greater role in economic growth. Is there a sense that perhaps the private sector is not, hasn't come to the party perhaps as best as it could?
Yes, there has been that sense over a period, although there has been investment, but we believe they could do more, and that's why we were making a call that they should invest. There has been hesitation, firstly because of the state of the economy globally, but we believe that we have done almost everything that we could under the circumstances, including the role played by government to invest on its own, as well as the kind of plans that we've put in place. We think very little could be said that people don't know where the country is going. We've put our policies, we have a plan, and therefore if you're an investor, you have certainty really that you could invest in a particular way. So we think they could do more. Not that they are not doing anything, but we think there has been hesitance or hesitation for a period. I know that currently, given what has happened to the dollar, there may be more hesitation. But I think over a period, no one could say there is uncertainty of policy in our country, as well as what government is doing at the economic level. So that's why we're making a call. We have heard discussions with the private sector, not once, and we have agreed that we need to do something. What we are really calling is to, in a sense, implement the understanding we've heard with the private sector. We need to see more of that. We have also worked on the incentive on other companies of a particular nature, and therefore nobody could say they don't know what the government is doing. That's why we're making a call.
Well, there are those who point out, for example, that if you were to unlock SAA's potential and privatize, perhaps they could take you seriously and say, yes, indeed, we can see that you are prepared to go further.
Well, in the economy, people have different views. Others will feel that you need to privatize. Others will feel that you need to nationalize. I think there are views on different sides. Fact of the matter is that we've made our point very clear that we adopted a stance and an approach of mixed economy. In other words, there are specific kind of businesses that we believed need to be in the hands of the government for the sake of the government. There are things that in our case they cannot be done by the private sector. We are dealing with a country that had a lot of disadvantaging the majority for centuries. If we want to lift up those people to the level of normal economic activities and participation, we should be education, we should be creating skills, involving people to economy. Private sector cannot do that. Private sector is there to make profit and ensure that their companies grow. But government has to take those people. It's a government's responsibility. And if the government has no possibilities to do so, then you are running a risk that those people will stay in a poor state forever. And that's the reason why some other going concerns or companies have to be in the hands of government so that you intervene where you are supposed to intervene. It's a question of how do we make those companies to be, in a sense, productive, to make a contribution.
Well, you reiterated the government's commitment to infrastructure. The question is, can we expect that program to continue as was initially scheduled? Do we have the money to spend on infrastructure?
Well, the question of the infrastructure is absolutely important in any economy. There is no economy that could develop without the requisite infrastructure. Again, you will notice that because of our history, the infrastructure was very narrow because it was meant to serve a smaller population than a bigger population. That demand will always be there for a long time to come. And therefore, the issue of growing the economy, among other things, you should have a platform. And one of the platforms is infrastructure, is energy. If those two are not there, you can't grow the economy. So the emphasis on the infrastructure is absolutely crucial. How we're going to do it, I think we're able to work out a program, and also we're able to find the money. What government must do is to find the money. If we think this is our priority, we must then say, where do we get the money so that we can make what we believe in is a priority for the growth. We then prioritize those. I think we have to look back and say, what do we do if the infrastructure is important and it remains important?
Well, there hasn't been a short supply of criticisms, but also concerns following the removal of Finance Minister Nene in like a month ago. And the private sector seems to be seeking assurances that something like that will never happen again.
No, I don't think in running countries you want people who are outside of government to run government. I think that would be a very funny logic. Firstly, the parties put across their policies, their programs, and they must implement. I think if people could say, no matter how much your policies are, your approach is don't do it, please. Then why do you have to go to people to say, I've got programs and policies to run? People, of course, this was a shocker to people because they're comfortable. They're comfortable that everything moves in a particular way. But no one has ever, and I'm not because I'm volunteering to give the reasons, no one has ever worried themselves to say, but what was the issue? Why did you do so? Isn't very funny that here is a person well qualified financially, more than those that have occupied that position before. What, for an example, people didn't realize is that the rand, for an example, had started going down when Nene was there. The fact that it went down because Nene was not there is not true. It was going down whilst Nene was there. And there were reasons why Nene had to move, because we have a BRICS region that has to be run, and it needs an experienced, reliable person. And I'm sure if we took, because that is absolutely a new area to work on, if no matter how qualified the person is, it was not already a running department, you took that kind of a person, comparing that person to Nene, people will say, but what is Zuma doing? Taking a fellow who has just worked in the finance committees, even if he's qualified, what is he going to do? Nene is known. Nene has interacted with international finances, and that bank is an international bank. That's where it's going to be moving. So it was important that that decision is taken. What then do you do with the department? Now, I didn't think a person who has never been there cannot run it. Ministers who have been there before had never run the department before of that nature. But they went and they ran the department. They became perfect. Nene himself started in other departments and moved to finance and finally became the minister. So I think there was an exaggeration. It was an exaggeration which was unfortunate that was taken. And in any case, I've never come across a period wherein people say the markets are happy. They're always unhappy markets. It differs in degrees. Really.
I think one of the key issues, Mr. President, was that as a direct result of what happened, South African assets lost a great deal of value.
Of course, it happens. Not the first time. the economic, meltdown, a lot of capital was lost in South Africa. A lot of jobs were lost. The situations in the economy create particular situations which move either in this direction or in that direction. No one can say to us for the first time that we had this kind of a problem. I think, as I'm saying, there was overreaction. People did not even say, let us wait and see how this works. The man was going to be working with a very experienced deputy minister. The department is perfect. He was not going to come and change the department. Department runs on its own, is a very capable department. I think it was just a question of this individual we don't like. How was he going to come in and then say, you guys now go away, I don't want you, I'm going to run on my own? It looks like as if he was coming in like one cook was going to be cooking bad food. He was going to come in a very effective, functioning department with very capable DG, DDGs, different kind of people, very capable deputy minister. I don't know why people thought when he comes in, the treasury is going to fall down. I don't understand. I mean, I've talked with few economists. They can't convince me that the department was going to fall. We are talking about perceptions. That's why I'm saying there was an overreaction, really, from my point of view. I thought about the decision. I've looked at a number of issues. I think people just jumped up because perhaps they did not understand why that happened.
In the unfortunate event of death, the last thing your family should have to worry about is money. That is why all clientele funeral plans pay out within 24 hours. Plus, we will send 200 Rand free airtime to help with the necessary funeral arrangements.
I'm very proud to have given my cousin a decent funeral because that is very important in our culture.
Clientele funeral plans are affordable. They start from just 99 Rand per month.
It's easy to apply. No medical examinations, no paperwork. It includes an unveiling and a grocery benefit.
Important. You can cover up to 13 people on one plan. And on our Ultimate Dignity plan, you can get all your premiums back. Yes, all your money back on top of your cover amount.
I'm very grateful to clientele.
SMS funeral to 47025.
The matric results have just come out. A very sorry situation in the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo. What, in your view, needs to be done? Because we need some drastic action now.
No, I think the Minister of Basic Education knows exactly what she's doing, and I think they are working on it. This department was created precisely to deal with the challenges in education. As you know, there was a perpetual uncertainty. Nobody could say the matric results are improving or whatever. It was almost like throwing a dice. You don't know whether it's going to come right because there was no focus on basic education. Secondly, the majority of the people who had been deprived education, they were sitting out there, huge numbers. Now, we then said, let us divide the department. Let us have a minister who focuses on basic education. Let us have a minister who focuses on higher education. Now, once that happens, she has actually come to know exactly what needs to be done. It's almost like a doctor who have diagnosed the sickness and is now prescribing the remedy. You can't say then overnight the patient is going to be fine. It takes time. I think what, for an example, has happened this time around, the matric students who sat for the examination, the number was greater than any other time before, which means the quantity that has come in, which is necessary, that we have got all South Africans being part of the process of getting education and skills. And that in itself, because in anything, if you are doing something and you begin to grow the volumes of it, it must have an effect of one kind or the other. What should people say? We have, in fact, we are in the process of doing what we need to do to open education to everybody. That must have its own bubbles here and there. I am very happy that we can now say a huge percentage of young people are at school, and therefore that must be saying to the teachers, you are dealing with a bigger kind of thing, and therefore it must affect a little bit so that with time they are going to adjust. So much as that is happening, I am fully aware that we are solving an old age problem, and we cannot solve it overnight.
But then, Mr. President, the hardworking Minister of Education is sitting on 3 reports by her own admission, which she told us about this past week. 3 independent reports that say teachers are not in class teaching, especially in African schools.
That's a problem we need to deal with. That's a problem.
She hasn't done anything about it.
No, but no, I think that, as far as I know, she has the reports. They're doing something about the teachers to try to enable the teachers to be able to teach. Even the kind of subjects that were difficult to do before, there are programs that are being done which are a response to some of those reports. But what has happened, they've not perfected it as yet. Perhaps there is no intensity in those kind of programs that they are running. It's a problem that we are coming across. You know that up until very recently, there have been teachers who were not qualified. For years they've been teaching. It was a problem. Only when we began to say, here is a particular department, that focus began to be looked at. That what do we do to empower the teachers? That, insofar as I know, there are programs to empower the teachers so that they are able to teach, particularly because of the new methodologies that have been introduced. And you must have a kind of wobbling situation at that point, because you are trying to make the teachers to teach quality education. And if there are teachers who are not there at teaching at the right time, then you have a problem, which accounts for other difficulties. But I think they are attending to those problems. Well,
we now have, this time around, more matriculants passed matric than in any other year. We have more students passing mathematics and science than has ever been the case before. More students getting bachelor's passes than has ever been the case before. Now, these students are going to want to go to university. As you know, as it has happened in the past few years, there's been a battle. They can't get places at universities. Add to that the fact that even those who will be able to make it, they won't have the money to study at universities. How are we going to deal with that situation?
Well, that situation is being dealt with. Again, I don't think it could be put on the shoulders of people in government now. That is a historic problem, because there were no universities built before, because there was no need to educate the majority of students. That's a problem of what you call, as we call it, rebuilding South Africa is part of that huger problem, because the universities that were there were very few, because people were locked out. Now, we have opened. It is almost like people were not allowed to come to the big cities, sitting in the outside. Once you remove those laws, they come in big numbers. There is no infrastructure. So they built informal settlements, etc. It becomes a problem. But it's a problem that is reacting to the successes. That's what is happening now. What we have done, for an example, we are opening TVETs, more of them, because we are saying we can't have every student going to the university. They've got to learn trade. They've got to learn professions. But besides that, even those who can't pass very well, they've got to find ways where they can empower themselves professionally in one form or the other. That's a kind of tackling of the problem that is happening, that the higher education, instead of universities only, but it is also expanding colleges, so that these students have places to go. We still have to deal with the old psychology, which is a colonial psychology, that only if we have gone to university then we are an educated person. Because you can go there, get skills, and be able to, in fact, do more in the country. So there are a number of things that we'll have to do to meet that kind of challenge.
Well, you announced in December on Reconciliation Day that you had indeed found the money for the so-called 0% increase in fees. Now, if those that led the Feesmustfall movement are to be believed, this is the year when they are going to fight for a free tertiary education. The question is, can we afford that? And if that campaign starts, what are we going to do?
No, we'll have to deal with that reality. I think as South Africans, we've got to deal with the real situation. We can't be almost like a utopian about situation, because everything we do, we need money. Democracy itself is an expensive system. It's a good system, expensive system, time-consuming, and we've got to appreciate that. Because if we don't appreciate it, then we could run into trouble. You see, for an example, if we believe that for us to gain anything, we must ban the country, I think that is not right. You might move to influence the kind of authority to say don't ban the country. And that means tension. I think we have got to appreciate that insofar as the fees that must be free, government has started long before in terms of at the lower classes. There are free fee schools today. And you can't do it overnight. And we are headed to start there because that's where the problems are of the poor students who at times, before there was a fee school, they could not even reach matric. And we've got to deal with that. It's an important task of the government that anyone, including the students, should appreciate. Now, to come to the tertiary area wherein the fees are rising, and we are dealing with that. We are talking to the tertiary institutions. But also, if we are to have free education, I think we've got to appreciate that we in the ANC, for an example, we have not started thinking today about free education. In 1955 already, we took a position that a democratic government will have to deal with it. But we define it. You are dealing with the students who are coming from the poor kind of houses or homesteads. You cannot say, when you don't have all the resources at your disposal, everybody else, even those who can afford, it must just be free. You are, in fact, participating in excluding the poor students because they are now going to fight on smaller kind of resources that are there. So what we have done is to say, how do we find money to begin a process? The Minister of Education, Higher Education, for an example, had summoned or established a committee that was looking at free education type of thing. It can't just be blanket. It has to look into some realities. You can't say, my child, for an example, I'm the president, it must get free education because it's democracy. When the child of some kids are there who has nothing, can't go because my child is in our school. So even the students have got to appreciate that all of us in the country have got to appreciate that it must move step by step by tackling, as we have done, to tackle the poorest of the poor, even before what we call a tertiary stage, and therefore ensure that we are moving. Even NSFAS is taking that into consideration. So I'm saying, I don't think it will make sense if people say, we say, okay, we are now saying 2016, no rise in the fees. And I think that is a victory that the students should appreciate.
I'm told we're running out of time. We have a few minutes left. Obviously,
okay.
Mr. President, very, very briefly, you devoted a great deal of time to what you called the tasks of the movement in your speech. Now, the ANC took it as one of its tasks to deal with the blight of racism that people feel needs to be dealt with and dealt with now. Your view on the events of the past week?
Well, firstly, I think, as I said, people at times have a tendency to exaggerate. I've been hearing people saying we are in a very racist country. It's not true. We defeated racism in this country. There are individuals, very few, who still have a problem. And that's how we should understand the problem. I think to paint everyone and exaggerate the situation of individuals as if it is the system, I think it is wrong. But those individuals who have come up and said very bad things, some of them from political parties, they need to be dealt with. What it says, I think there must now be consequences to people who practice or utter racist things. It must not just be the question of saying, sorry, I apologize. There must be consequences. And I think the reaction of the public is absolutely correct, which says, what do you do with this individual who thinks as it? I mean, people have used very derogatory kind of expressions. We must deal with them. Let us not pretend as if this is a huge problem. It's a problem of specific individuals. Let us deal with those individuals. And I think that's the way to go.
Well, speaking of consequences, the ANC took a position, or it was made clear that there shouldn't be talk of succession, there shouldn't be any electioneering. But this past week alone, I was speaking to the president of the ANC Women's League, who made no bones about the fact that they are, in her own words, like actually canvassing actively for a woman president. Should that be happening, or who should be allowed to canvass and who shouldn't?
Well, we said this is not yet time. This was last year. We said we can't be consumed by that for now, partly because we have faced it by this year, wherein we needed to work as a united kind of organization to deal with elections, because if we begin the canvassing, really is going to defeat the effort that we need to put together to win elections. There's still a year, I mean the next year, wherein there will be a conference of the ANC. But at the moment, the reason why we said so, you can't start very far, particularly when you have a task like elections, to start making people to move in different kind of what you call sort of groupings, because we want people at the right time. Because it's not that we said they should not do it because it's not done. It's a culture of the ANC. Even in 1912, they were canvassing, they were candidates. All we said, the timing was not right. And we still say it. But it does not mean people cannot have ideas. But if you start campaigning about it, this is what the organization says. It is distracting us, it is diverting our attention from a key task of fighting elections.
And come that elective year, you won't be available for election, re-election,
I know you want an answer, you won't get that answer. Well, all what I've said, I can't go for third term. That is a point I've made. But that is a point we make as an individual. The ANC decides on who must do what. That's not individuals on their own to say, I just say because that is an approach that the ANC has followed so far. Well, and as an ANC, that's what I've been saying.
Well, one former president once told me that, and we know what happened thereafter. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.